Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Well, hello, I've got Jerry Zaiden on the line. Jerry, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jim.
It's, I haven't talked to you for a little while, and I see you grinding it out with work and play, driving around a Porsche these days or something like that, right?
Yeah, the Porsches are definitely a new injection of enthusiasm. It's given me a little bit of fun, different direction, and applying to the day-to-day here at Camburg with some extra enthusiasm and ideas. It's pretty neat, meeting a lot of good people in that world because, I can't just buy the car and cruise it around. I got to buy the car and meet all the other people who have the cars and go to all the events, and how it is.
I love it. Well, I was just busting your chops a little bit because I've always known you to be driving a beautiful truck that you guys have put together over there at Camburg, but I love seeing your photos and what you're up to within the Porsche realm. So I know you're having some fun with that. I was very interested in having you on my show actually for some time now. And I'm glad I got you today because, we were competitors as off-road racers and kind of grew the spec trophy truck class together and have always respected what you've been able to do with work. But as I got to know you better, I learned more about your career, how your company started. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, man, you are the perfect candidate for this show because you're a guy that started a business early on and just grinded it out, and now you're enjoying the success of that. So, Jerry, what we typically do on the show is we take you all the way back maybe to, because I know when your business started, let's take you all the way back to high school and maybe what some of your early jobs were, and then ultimately how you got into starting Camburg, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so growing up in Huntington Beach, California, on the surf team, I was fortunate in one way, and I'll stay positive on this one. But being an only child, I had a lot of me time, and I had parents who, my dad was in sales, my mom was in hospital administration. So I could say I was fortunate where I had involved parents and supported pretty much every single thing I wanted to do. The one thing that they didn't do was focus on my schooling. So it was kind of like their philosophy in life is schooling, which is really cool because I'm here today because of their relaxed environment on schooling, but their heavy pressure of business and sales and understanding the value of the dollar. So back to it, my dad's a sales guy. He's worked in the tool industry, from grinding equipment to nail guns in the construction world, and, moving to California. I was 3 years old in 1976. I was born in 73. And I pretty much remember, from 6 years old, right before they moved into the main house I grew up in, just going to the beach. My dad loved the beach. He's from Chicago, in his work trucks, right? So he'd do work, he'd pick me up from school. We'd go to the beach. One thing led to another. And at 10 years old, got a surfboard. So now I'm just the typical Huntington Beach surf kid, but with parents that were involved keeping me on track, right? So It wasn't drugs. I stayed away from drugs. I didn't drink until probably college years, and drinking for me is a couple beers. My same with the friends is one beer. But bottom line is I'm the opposite person of who you typically see out there in the desert racing trucks and building off-road trucks. So let's fast forward all the way to 16 years old. I get a brand new 1989 Toyota pickup truck. It's the one at this price, $59.95, little standard cab, two-wheel drive Toyota truck. And I think it's the greatest thing. Love it. I didn't expect anything new. Thought I was going to honestly get my dad's 1985 Oldsmobile Cutlass Brome, right? the 2-door thing. I'm like, got it figured out with surf racks, right? Well,
Sure.
I get a truck. Well, the truck leads to, going on surf trips and getting down into Mexico, and don't tell my parents that one, but, went down into Mexico, and then next thing you know, it's the Downey off-road catalog, and, some kid in class, actually a really good friend of mine now, Greg Metz, he had a older 4-wheel drive with the V6 Buick conversion in it, and the Downey off-road catalog, and it's just like this beaming light shined out right into my face, and it's like, okay, torsion bars, upper A-arms, dual shock kits. So I do all this work to the truck, and that's truck one, and just really got hooked on the auto customizing. And then there's a shop down the street from where I am right now at Camburg. It was Desi's Accessories. His brother's a pro skater. Desi owned this window tinting business that would put sunroofs in trucks. And that led to like window tint and getting all involved in stereos. And I just remember one day, the guy's cutting a hole in the roof, and he's kind of doing a crappy job, one of his employees. And I go up to Desi, and I'm like, hey, man, can you let me cut the hole in the roof? This guy's not really taking his time.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at me as a 16-year-old kid, and he's like, you really think you could do it? Okay, cool. So he moves the tape lines in an inch just so in case I screw up, I don't have a hole in the roof of someone's brand new Honda Accord that's destroyed, right? So I do it, and he's like, I'm like perfectly on the line. So now I'm installing sunroofs. That's one of my first, times into metal fabrication. Well, it's cool, but it's slow and it's not really the best pay. I'm into stereos, and so then all of a sudden the car stereo boom, and in that time, 1989, 1990 is just massive in Southern California.
Yeah.
So I'm fabricating, now just out of wood, making speaker boxes and having loud stereos and doing car alarms. And so now high school for me is like, okay, surfing's what I do in the day. I show up to the important classes in high school. I have photography and ceramics as the boosting my GPA. So I actually graduated high school. And then I'm going to work. And so one of the funny stories is the dean calls my dad into the school. They have a powwow. Then I get called out of a class, and it's like, hey, you're not going to graduate high school. I'm like, oh no, I have my 2.0 average. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I have this all figured out. Well, it's funny because he goes, flipping burgers the rest of your life isn't going to pay for life. And I'm like, well, I'm not flipping burgers.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I sales manage at this car stereo place. We sell cell phones and alarms and blah, blah, blah. Well, one thing leads to another, and my dad looks at him and he's like, yeah, his tax return was bigger than mine this year, because every time I'm selling a cell phone, I get a $300 kickback from GTE Mobile Communications, because that's the dealer we were. Back then it was LA Cellular and Pac Bell. So fast forward into that, I wind up putting an alarm in the dean's car and a stereo in the principal's car. So, life lesson right there is like, if you're supplying what people want, they're going to buy it. You're going to make $1.
Sure.
So, fast forward a little further. Now we're going to the Score Fireworks 250 race out in Barstow, and Jason Campbell, we meet, junior, senior year in high school. We've always known each other from middle school through high school. And we're going to the races, and now it's like, man, I want what the race truck has on my truck. So now stereos become very uncool, and shocks through the bed and better suspension becomes the total, tweaked out focus of my mind thought, right? So all I'm thinking about and drawing is long travel suspension and shocks through the bed and, race trucks, right? So, and it's funny because all of my heroes back then are now my friends, right?
Yeah.
Like this industry is so small, and it's funny telling these stories, right? Of like, man, I remember going to the fireworks race back in like the early 90s, and this is so cool. So then comes in 1993, I'm making some money and, working at Rod Millen Motorsport, dream job. We're doing, rally cars and tricking out sport compact cars. They're building, at the time, the car Rod Millen set the world record at Pikes Peak in with the Toyota Celica. I buy a 93 Ford F-150 because, man, I-beams and F-150s are just the coolest thing, because you're going out to these races. And so that leads to like building my own radius arms and, you know, dual shock, triple shock coil buckets and Deaver, or actually it wasn't even Deaver, it was National Springs at the time. And going out to the races, and Jason and I going, dude, we need to start our own business doing this, because every time I pull into a gas station, someone wants this. Someone's asking questions. So I'm in my parents' garage. I sub-panel the garage. I got metal fab equipment. Every dollar I make, I'm buying a tool. You know, I guess it's the benefit of being a surfer is it doesn't cost money to go surf. I'm getting free surfboards and clothing to go do it. And I'm living that life. And then when the waves suck, I'm out my parents' garage building stuff out of metal.
Yeah. Hey, Jerry.
So 1990. Yeah.
I want to stop you real quick because, you know, we have a lot of listeners on the East Coast, and what you're talking about here is complete California culture. You know, so for us out here, and by the way, in the 80s, I had my little truck that, you know, I did all those great things too and made it look cool. I didn't spend as much time as you did at the off-road races, but, you know, culturally, that was a big deal during that time. And I think what's fascinating about it is that not only did you have an early love and affection for the sport and the industry, but your mind started evolving into how do I make money at this? And I think even today there's so many trends across the country and around the world that if people open their eyes to the things that they like and love, that there is opportunities within them. And that's exactly what you did, is you found some opportunity there, right?
Oh, 100%. You know, I've always had an entrepreneur spirit, and that, you know, my mom and dad put that into me at a very, very young age. I remember at the SWAT meet, you know, like, hey, I want to get this thing. And my mom's pulling me to the side, kind of like, you know, with their finger quietly, like, come here. Hey, offer them $4, not $5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that one moment in my life, and I actually offered $3 and got it for $3, probably because I was a cute little kid. And it's like, how do you say no to this little kid?
Yeah.
But it taught me right there that you do not have to pay face value for anything. And money means something.
Yeah.
So, you know, my parents are really good about that. So I saw money-making opportunities in everything I did. And I think I literally lived my life that way with pretty much almost everything. It's like, you know, if I buy something, I don't want to lose money on it. If I get really into it, how do I make money doing it? So essentially getting paid to enjoy what I do. And that happened in surfing, where I was shaping surfboards for a while. I was picked up my first welding machine, not because of my truck, but because of making the racks to shape the surfboard on.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a chop saw and a Miller buzz box, they called them, you know, a little stick welder. And I was making the racks for myself, which turned out to being all the other shapers needed the racks. So I made the racks and built out the factories. Like Channel Islands got bought by Burton Snowboards. I built out their whole factory when that happened. Mm-hmm. Because of the reputation I started when I was 15, 16 years old with a little welding machine and a chop saw. So pretty much self-taught, but the influences along the way are like the older neighborhood kids that had tools in their garage working on their cars or trying to weld something. These are all things that, you know, you just see a path in it. Like we all can take from something, whether it's the BMX bikes leading to mountain biking or the skateboarding leading to whatever. It's just, how do you do that? Well, you have to have that entrepreneur spirit at some point. And not everyone's born with that. That's why I think a lot of people are blind on living their passion through work. Mm-hmm. And when you see that, we all kind of click the same. We're all very similar type of people. We think differently. Some people kind of knock it. And I remember growing up, having the lifted truck or the loud stereo. I got heckled by all my surf friends. And now all my surf friends that are still just sitting in the parking lot surfing every day and scratching their head wondering why they don't have success, whatever success means to people. They're just like, man, I remember back in the day you were doing that and you're still doing it. It's so cool. Right. Like they see it. So the same guys heckling me back then are kind of in awe of like what we've accomplished. Yeah. It's really like, it doesn't feel like work. There's times when it's work and you got to grind through it, but it's so fun when we're doing it. And there's always an accomplishment when you're done.
Well, and also those guys that were heckling you that are now successful are going back to you and having you dress up their $80,000 Raptors to make them even cooler too, right?
Oh, 100%. It's funny because